Welcome to the 80s and 90s Uncensored podcast about the... Oh, no, I don't do that intro anymore, do I?
Oh, dude, because we're not going to be so self-effacing anymore.
Yeah.
People do care about that crap. We know that they do.
Yeah. So we don't need to, say it anymore. Now it's just the 80s and 90s Uncensored, the podcast.
Well, you had some kind of thing about how you were wrapping up in the Golden Globes of nostalgia or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to the 80s and 90s Uncensored, where we revel in the golden glow of nostalgia.
Yeah, there's something like that. There you
Something
go.
like that, yeah.
I'm warming up to it because, I was so I like things to stay the same, but things change, man.
That's life.
And people do. We know that people do care about that crap.
Yeah. So
just like they care about our picks for the Halloween movie night.
Yeah, Halloween. It's Halloween. You need to sit down, watch a few movies, eat some popcorn, steal the candy from the kids, all that kind of stuff. Have a few drinks and watch a movie.
Yeah, so we each have our picks of four movies from the 80s and the 90s. We switched it up a little bit. Milo's going 80s today, and I'm going 90s.
Yep.
Yeah, and we had a little trouble thinking about what we should do for our Halloween episode, but our buddy Nostalgia Nate, he popped some dough for some drinks in our busker jar, and he was thinking the same thing. One of the things we were thinking is kind of doing a movie night list. So this is for our pal Nostalgia Nate, who has like a monthly curation of his great collection. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you're missing out.
Well, thanks for the suggestion, Nate. This is a good one. Well, I'll go first, I guess, because the 80s,
you're the 80s now.
Or the 90s, exactly.
Yeah, you're the 80s, dude. Yeah.
Well, to start your movie night for mine is going to be Evil Dead 2, which came out in 1987, written, directed by Sam Raimi, starring Bruce Campbell. So the reason why I went with Evil Dead 2 is because it's basically just the Evil Dead with a budget. It's more or less the same film. It's just they have a budget for it. So Bruce Campbell plays Ash Williams, who travels to a cabin in the woods with his girlfriend, where they find a tape recording with some professor doing his thing, and they find the Book of Evil. And a bunch of bad things happen that terrorize Ash. Things that cause him to have to chop off his own hand, fight versions of himself. And we see that very common move that's done in Sam Raimi films, especially his horror films, where it's the camera moving through the woods and stuff like that. A very common Sam Raimi thing that he started in the first Evil Dead. It's just low budget, well made. Bruce Campbell is an amazing human being, and I love him so much. Well, and it's cool, him and Sam Raimi, every time Sam Raimi does a film, he always has Bruce do a cameo in it, like the Spider-Man movies, he did cameos in it and stuff like that. And Bruce is good about making fun of himself and how he's kind of like this B-horror movie god to a lot of people and has no problem, talking smack about it and stuff. So it's good. And this proves this is such that stereotypical trapped in the woods type film. He can't get into his car. He can't escape because the road's blocked off. He's alone. There's no way to communicate with the outside world. The spirits are attacking him. He's got to fight them off. And it's a perfect blend of comedy and horror, which is why it's a good way to start your horror movie evening movies, because it's not too serious.
Yeah, that's a good one. I love that movie. And it is kind of goofy, tongue in cheek. It's a horror movie, but it's just goofy enough to make it kind of almost a comedy. Yeah, that's a good choice. My first one from the 90s, we got to get this one out of the way because we're going to pick it. It's going to be on this list. The Nightmare Before Christmas. It's a must. It's just, for me, it's a must, right?
It's good. You can watch it with the kids.
Yeah. But I think it's a fun movie, and I like fun movies. Directed by Tim Burton. It's a stop motion film, and it's actually the first stop motion film to be rated PG. Did you know that?
What, they were all G before that?
Yeah. So that's an interesting. It was scored by Danny Elfman, who also did the singing voice for Jack Skellington. And the normal talking voice, Chris Sarandon, was picked specifically because he kind of sounds like Danny Elfman. Paul Rubens was also a voice actor in this. He played Locke. So it took 100 people 3 years to make this movie because only 1 second was 12 stop motions for only 1 second of footage. So this is a lot of work. I like Tim Burton. I like this movie. This is one of only two Touchstone films, the other one being Who Framed Roger Rabbit, to be considered Disney films. And in 2001, Disney wanted to do a sequel. What Burton was like, no sequels on my stuff. I don't do sequels. And that's why I love Tim Burton. He makes some good
Batman.
Well, he made the Batman, right? Yeah, not all his stuff, but a lot of his stuff, he doesn't want to do sequels. And he probably didn't even want to do the Batman either. Yeah. So I like Tim Burton's mentality where I want to make a really good movie and then I want to move on and make other movies. So good on Tim. But Tim and Danny Elfman, Tim Burton, Danny Elfman, who had worked together many times, I guess they had a fallout in this movie. They had creative differences. And then they kind of stopped working together after that. Burton actually chose a guy named Howard Shore to score Ed Wood, which was his movie after, because they had issues.
So they still kind of have issues? Do you know?
Right. Yeah, I don't know if they've ever made anything after that. I'll have to look, but they really had a falling out, which is unfortunate. But I think this is just I love stop motion. I think it's a lost art. I think computer animation takes a lot out of these kind of animated movies. I think it takes a lot of work and there's a lot of reality with stop motion. And I really dig stop motion. This is just a fun Halloween-y meets Christmas. It's based on Tim Burton's poem he wrote back in the 80s when he was an animator at Disney. He saw some merchandise displays kind of changing up from Halloween to Christmas, and they were kind of together. And he was like, and he actually wrote like a 3-page poem, which later became this movie. So I like it. I think it's a perfect kind of Halloween movie.
I'm always impressed with filmmakers that do stop motion because of, like you mentioned, the time that goes into creating stop motion to get that 12 shots per second. 12 times you're moving that thing, take a picture, and then 12, take a picture. Like the time is just,
you do that 12 times and you only get 1 second of footage.
Yeah, it's crazy. And no way I would ever have the patience to do that. So I'm always impressed with stop motion.
It must take a lot of patience.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So now I'm going to get a little bit more scary with my films as the night goes on. And I'm going to go 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your door. And I'm going for A Nightmare on Elm Street, which came out in 1984. Directed and written by Wes Craven, the great horror filmmaker that he is, starring Robert Englund as Freddy. And you had Heather Langenkamp as the main character in this one. She's basically being haunted, in essence, by Freddy, who appears to kids in their dreams and kills them. But when they die in their dreams, they die in real life. Mm-hmm. This also featured a little known actor who didn't have too much of a career after this, but by the name of Johnny Depp.
Ooh.
Johnny Depp. Yeah, I know. You probably never heard of him.
What the hell is that?
This was his film debut. And he died a nice gruesome death of blood and gore. This has that iconic scene of Nancy in the tub where the hand comes up between the legs and is just like creepy kind of Jaws moment there.
So bathroom Freddy Jaws.
Yeah, basically made anyone scared to take a bath for years after seeing this film. Apparently, Wes Craven came up with the idea because he actually read a story in the newspaper about some guys who they were Southeast Asian refugees, and they actually died in the throes of horrific nightmares, according to what I read. And that gave him part of the idea for this film. Only made on a $1.8 million budget. It made that back in the first weekend it was released. So huge grossing film, made $25.62 million in return. It more or less saved the studio that released it. They were actually kind of almost on the outs, the New Line Cinema. They were basically running out of money, and then this film more or less saved the studio. And of course, it's spawned numerous sequels ever since. But you got to go with the original.
Yeah. I must admit, I'm not a super horror fan. Like, I'm not a mega fan. I don't hate it, but I'm kind of picky. But this is one that I do like, mainly because I think it's so creative. You know, you got the Jasons and Michael Myers, and they're just going around with their knife and stuff. But Freddy he's kind of funny, which is weird because he's cracking jokes while he's like murdering children in their dreams, which is kind of weird to like, but he's kind of funny. And they got some really weird special effects. He's not just hacking people up with an axe. He's like got these really strange dreamlike ways of taking down his victims, which I always thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, a large portion of the budget for that first film went towards those special effects. Little side trivia note, the Freddy's glove actually features, it's hanging on the wall in the Evil Dead second movie. So you actually see a little cameo of the glove.
There's a little tie-in. Nice. My second movie, you're going to think I'm kind of schmaltzy with my list, but I don't care. This is what I would watch on Halloween, so I'm going for it. The Addams Family from 1991.
What?
Yeah.
Dude, so many good, creepy, scary movies came out in the 90s, and you're going with the Addams Family?
Dude, I don't really like scary, creepy movies. I was. In fact, I was like 12. And Christina Ricci was in that, and she was 11. And I kind of I had a kid crush on Christina.
Oh, totally. Me too, man. Like, absolutely.
She played Wednesday along with Raul Julia, Angelica Houston, and the great Christopher Lloyd. It was the debut film, directorial film of Barry Sonnenfeld. Tim Burton was supposed to direct this, but it didn't fall through. It didn't come through. It fell through, right? So Christina plays Wednesday, and I liked her because she's kind of cute but grim, and I just had a huge crush on her, a kid crush. We're about the same age, so I can say all this. But Wednesday, do you know Wednesday? She's named after a Mother Goose poem, which goes, Wednesday's child is full of woe. And Wednesday's middle name is Friday. Did you know that?
Wednesday, Friday, Adam?
Wednesday, Friday, Adams.
Did not know that.
And Christina, I guess, is the one who came up with that dead sleeping pose with the arms across the chest. She came up with that herself. So she's smart, too. She's not only cute, pretty, but she's smart. She said it was one of her favorite roles ever, too.
That's cool.
Yep. So Christopher Lloyd played Uncle Fester. Do you know who was originally supposed to play Uncle Fester? They wanted to have the great Anthony Hopkins, but he turned it down.
He's like, Addams Family? I'm Anthony Hopkins, bitch. I'm not going to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I guess Uncle Fester, the fat suit is actually from The Godfather Part 2 from the 70s.
Oh, yeah?
Did you know that? It was Bruno Kirby's fat suit.
That's funny.
Yeah. Kim Basinger was originally going to play Morticia. Did you know that?
I did not.
But she dropped it for another film. And then Cher wanted to play, but I guess that didn't go through. So, but I think Angelica Houston was great.
Yeah.
One other piece of trivia. Do you remember that MC Hammer song about they go what they want to do, say what they want to say, the Addams Family? It won a Razzie for worst original song.
I believe that.
Yeah, it was a stupid song.
That song does kind of suck.
MC Hammer won a Razzie. So now you know that MC Hammer won a Razzie.
Well, that's probably.
I like it. I just dig. It kind of had that Tim Burton-y feel, even though Tim Burton didn't have anything to do with it. It has Christina Ricci, who I have a big crush on even to this day. And I think it's just a lot of fun. It's a really good adaptation. Back when they did adaptations of kind of older properties kind of well, and they had a lot of fun with it. Now it's kind of like overused, but back then it was kind of a new thing to have kind of a reboot of an old property.
Well, back then it was fun because the original Addams Family, of course, was quirky and kooky and all that kind of stuff, like the song. And so they did the same thing with that, but they got very talented actors. I mean, Raul Julia was a very talented actor to be doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And Angelica Houston was the perfect Morticia, and they just had a good budget for it. I mean, the actual house was $100,000. They built it for $100,000.
Wow.
Then tore it down after the movie. It's gone. $100,000
gone. They just rebooted that again, actually.
Oh, they probably did 8 times they're just constantly rebooting things. And this was the first reboot of it. And now they're just rebooting it over and over and over again. But this was the original reboot, and it was great. And I thought it was a lot of fun. And stop remaking it. Try something else.
That's not going to happen. All right. For my next film, I'm going scary in space with aliens. Ooh. So everybody loved the first Alien movie, and everybody loves the second Alien movie. This is one of those rare films that, like, the second one is as good as the original.
Yeah.
Anything after that kind of goes downhill, but you've got Sigourney Weaver reprising her role. You've got Paul Reiser in it. And so basically she's brought back with a group of space marines who go down to a planet that is now infested with multiple aliens instead of one. But the standout star in this film, of course, is Bill Paxton, who has some of the best lines throughout the entire film with his like, man. And of course,
game over, man.
Game over.
Game over, man.
What the fuck are we going to do now, man? Game over.
What's up with this shit?
Game over, man. It's game over.
It just takes everything from the first film and ups it, but does it well. So a lot of sequels do that same thing. They just take the stuff from the first film and kind of add more to it. But this one does it really well. The special effects are fantastic in this one. You get cool guns, you get the spaceship stuff, and it's just as creepy, it's just as scary, and it's just as action-packed. James Cameron, of course, directed this one and did a fantastic job with it.
And what made this a cool sequel is it wasn't trying to be the first one. The first one was straight up kind of horror. It was a space horror.
Yeah.
But this one was an action horror, like straight up action star. Sigourney Weaver was like this badass mother figure, and she's got to fight the alien mother. It's very maternal.
Yeah.
But it's
and she's protecting the little girl.
Yeah, she's got flamethrowers, and she's got giant robots, and she's kicking ass. So it's really an action movie at its core.
Yeah.
I thought it was awesome.
It does a great job of combining that horror and action. It still scares you.
It's still scary. It
still has the good number, some good jump scares in there. It's still creepy with like
still
the
gory,
aliens sneaking out to the shadows, and you got some nice gore. So it's good. It's a well-made sequel.
Yep, one of the very few.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, dude, I'm gonna go for it, and I'm gonna get your ire, but I'm gonna go for it. 1995 Casper.
Isn't that also Christina Ricci?
It is, because I got such a crush on her, dude. I'm going to do a tribute.
Dude,
I'm going to make this a tribute to Christina. Maybe she'll go to the wine bar with me.
I'm just going to take over your era, and I'm going to redo it. And you are no longer allowed to choose movies.
It stars Christina, and she's a teenager by then. So was I. So I wished I were Casper, having kind of a love interest with Christina, but her father is played by Bill Pullman. They're the Harveys, which is named after the comic book publisher that published Casper. This was the first film to have a fully computer-generated effect character in the main role. So years before Jar Jar Binks, we had Casper. He was the first fully computer-generated main character. So that's kind of interesting. Steven Spielberg. This was directed by Brad Silberling, but this was kind of produced by Steven Spielberg, and he wanted actually Steve Barron to direct this, who did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but he turned it down. But then he said it was a mistake.
He's like, if I would have known I got to work with Christina Ricci, I would have done it.
Yeah, or that it would be a huge hit, because this was a huge hit. Although Christina didn't like this movie, she said it sucked.
Well, I'm with Christina.
Because she's like, I had to pretend like I was falling in love with a cartoon ghost. Pretty stupid. And they were talking to tennis balls the whole time too, because it's all computer generated. So she's like trying to fall in love with this tennis ball. And she said it sucked. I didn't like that movie. Plus she wanted to get out of doing kind of kids type movies. So this was Universal's first live action animated hybrid movie. And also Anthony Hopkins was also in line to play the dad in this.
And he's like, what do you think, people? I didn't do Addams Family, so screw you on
well, he had a
Oscar as well.
conflict with Nixon, so he didn't outright turn it down
like,
because
do I want to play Nixon or some dad in a cheesy kids ghost film?
Well, and according to this, John Ritter, Tom Hanks, Dennis Quaid, Travolta, Robin Williams, Jim Carrey, Tim Allen, Kurt Russell were all offered this role of the dad, and none of them took it. So they finally gave it to Bill Pullman because he's usually the guy you give to after like
everybody else says no.
All the A-listers, and he's kind of A- lister. So I love Bill Pullman, but yeah, he's usually the guy you give it to. Like he's like the A- lister. But I love you, Bill. I do. I'm serious.
Oh, poor Bill.
I think you're underrated, brother.
Yeah.
But I'm going with it because Christina Ricci. I loved you when we were teenagers. I loved you in Casper, even though you hated the movie.
Oh, sad choice. All right. So now that we've gotten the action out of the way, your heart rate's up. I'm going to scare you before you go to bed. And you can't get scarier than Poltergeist. Scary as heck. Directed by Tobe Hooper, who also made Texas Chainsaw Massacre, by the way, but more or less directed by Steven Spielberg. So Steven Spielberg produced the film, and you could argue co-directed it with Tobe Hooper. It stars Craig T. Nelson, and you have a family who moves into a house that is haunted because the house is built on a place that it should not be built, a graveyard. You have the little girl played by Heather O'Rourke, who does the whole in front of the TV and they're here.
Yeah, that's classic.
Yep. Parodied many times after since. I remember watching this as a kid. I don't know why my parents watched it and for some reason let me watch it with them.
Well, it was rated PG.
Yeah, well, that's probably why then. Because
this is before the PG-13 rating came out, and this was one of those. Spielberg scared the
films.
shit out of us.
Yeah.
That's why they did the PG-13.
Yep, they're like, well, it's Steven Spielberg. Come on.
Yeah, Steven Spielberg is PG. Let's let the kids watch it. We're like, oh my God.
Yeah, and it's true. This movie, I'm sure I had nightmares after watching this movie because I do remember being scared shitless, especially like the scene in the pool and the mud and the skeletons, which were real skeletons. So Jo Beth Williams, who played the girl who got pulled into there and stuff, they didn't tell her till after the fact, and that they were actually real skeletons because they were cheaper than having fake skeletons made. The movie, of course, has the Poltergeist curse, which is a bit of an urban legend about it. They've even done like movies and stuff about this. Dominique Dunne, who was in the first film, was murdered by her boyfriend. She was strangled by him because she wanted to break up with him and he didn't want her to break up. That happened just before Halloween in 1982. Heather O'Rourke, the little blonde girl, she played the little blonde girl in actually the first three movies. She died at the age of 12 in 1988 from a cardiac arrest caused by septic shock due to a bowel obstruction.
Wow.
James Caan, who did the novelization of the film, when he was working on the novel, his house was hit by a lightning bolt. And then ever since then, he's had problems with electronics and stuff. Julie Beck, she was actually in the second Poltergeist. She died from stomach cancer. Will Sampson, who was also in Poltergeist 2, died from complications due to a heart-lung transplant. The whole series of films had all kinds of crazy stuff because of the Poltergeist curse.
Wow. That's some paranormal stuff right there, like in real life. That's crazy.
Cursed, I say.
Totally. So my last one. So Christina Ricci finally got her rated R movie in 1999, and it's called Sleepy Hollow.
So Jamie's 90s movie marathon is basically just a Christina Ricci movie marathon. Like
it is, because I love her. And And I'm gonna watch her all Halloween because I think she's awesome. This one's directed by Tim Burton. This is a rated R movie. It's based on the Washington Irving short story about a headless German mercenary and terrorizing a town, and this Ichabod Crane played by Johnny Depp, who's kind of freaked out and all that. Do you remember that Disney cartoon about Sleepy Hollow and Ichabod Crane?
Ichabod Crane, yeah.
Yeah, Tim Burton did a lot of scenes in tribute to that cartoon.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and he was really inspired by the Hammer movies, and Christopher Lee even made a cameo because Tim Burton really liked the Hammer films, and this really inspired it. Interesting fact for filmmakers, like you might find this interesting. The whole thing was like filmed in some kind of blue.
It has a very distinct look to it.
Yeah, and the blood had to be bright orange in order for it to show up as red on screen. I thought that was interesting. Johnny did his own stunts for a lot of these things. He wore like a bulletproof suit while his horse was dragging him around. And I guess that horse, the whole crew was amused with him because I guess that horse farted a lot.
Fart. It's always funny.
Yeah, but the cast and crew, they often said it's like walking in Tim Burton's head because they built a lot of the whole town. Everything was built from scratch. It took 3 months, and 70% of it was filmed in this soundstage that they built. So they really felt like they were in Tim Burton's mind. I think it's a really good kind of rated R version of this story, which I've always been fascinated with, like this Haitian mercenary gets his head blown off with the cannon and then terrorizes this town in New England. I always thought I was always a fan of the story and the Disney cartoon, and I thought this is a real horror movie. So say what you will about my other ones, this might be Tim Burton, but this is rated R, and it's got Christopher Walken as the headless horseman, and it's scary. Like little kids shouldn't watch this. This is a full blown horror movie. So you can say what you want about my other ones, but this one's kind of scary, bro.
I'll let you have this one because I do really like this movie. And it's funny, the other night I actually was flipping through and looking for something to watch, and I came across it, and I almost watched it. Actually, I ended up watching something else, but it was like, I do really like this movie, and I wouldn't mind seeing it again. So I might actually still watch it again over the next couple of weeks. But
at least I got one on the list.
You got one. You got one. Yeah. Other than that, that's a sad selection of Halloween horror movies.
Whatever, man. I like kind of lighthearted shizzle, and I like Christina. And she's listening. That wine date invitation is open.
Sorry, man.
Invitation.
Not allowed. I call dibs on Christina. I know I'm married.
No,
but
I just did a tribute. You don't get shizzle, dude.
I didn't include it. Well, she was too young for the 80s for my movies. Maybe we'll do a 90s Christina Ricci movie playlist or something for a later episode.
Do a whole retrospective on our
Christina Ricci retro.
We'll have a love triangle in our head. Well, it won't be a real one. It'll be on our heads where you and I are kind of fighting over Christina, and she's like, I don't even know who those guys are.
Well, that's our Halloween night movie list. I'd recommend sit down, enjoy my movies. You can skip most of Jamie's if you want. I would. If you want to let us know what you watch on Halloween, you can reach out to us on social media, such as Twitter at the 80s and 90s.com. Find us on the web at the 80s and 90s.com. And with that, we will say we are out of here like Heather O'Rourke because she's dead. Goodbye.
Ooh, dark, dude.
It's Halloween.
Damn, you're dark.
I had to go dark.
You're a dark man. You're dark, bro. You're dark.